I left my wife the papers after she said yes to her boss's dinner tomorrow. So I disappeared, cut off my phone, left proof on the counter, watched her panic through the security accounts, let her find the quitclaim deed, and sign the final divorce papers without looking back. Welcome back to WZ Tales. Her boss asked her to dinner while staring me down. She said yes. I didn't argue. I walked out and started erasing myself from existence. As you listen, think about the moment you would have walked away. My name is Cole Branson. I am 47, and for 20 years I worked as a patent attorney. I spent my life protecting other people's ideas, building contracts strong enough to survive almost anything. The strange part is that I could protect an invention better than I could protect my own marriage. The night everything finally broke looked normal from the outside. Nicole's company was hosting an awards dinner to celebrate another record quarter. She had been director of marketing for 6 years, and she was moving up fast. I was proud of her. I really was. Even when it meant eating dinner alone 3 nights a week. Even when our talks became little more than bills, errands, and who was handling what that weekend. The ballroom was one of those expensive hotel spaces downtown, all crystal lights and polished marble and people dressed like they were trying to close deals before dessert. I stood near the bar with a whiskey and watched Nicole move through the room. She was good at it, confident, sharp, easy smile. That was what drew me to her all those years ago. Then Vincent Crawford appeared beside her. He was 50, silver-haired, polished, the kind of man who wore power the way other people wore a suit. I had met him twice before. Both times the way he looked at Nicole had bothered me, not enough to start a fight. Just enough to leave a mark. They talked for a minute. I could not hear them, but I saw him lean closer. I saw Nicole tilt her head the way she did when she wanted something. Then Vincent looked straight at me across the room. "Dinner tomorrow," he said, loud enough for me to hear. "Just the two of us. We can discuss your promotion." Nicole looked surprised for maybe half a second, then I saw it. Not shame, not hesitation, opportunity. She glanced at me, then looked back at him and smiled. "Sure," she said. That was the moment. Sometimes the truth does not arrive slowly. Sometimes it walks right into the room and says your name. And at that point, what would you have done? I did not argue. I did not cause a scene. I put my glass down, turned around, and walked out. My footsteps echoed through the hotel lobby. Nobody followed me. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 10 minutes with both hands on the steering wheel and the engine off. I expected anger. What I felt instead was clarity. The lawyer part of my mind went to work. She made a choice. He made a power move. And I had just watched my wife accept both of them while I stood there like a piece of furniture. Nicole texted me. "Where did you go?" I did not answer. I drove home, pulled into the driveway, and sat there under the porch light she always left on. The house looked perfect, quiet, warm, like a life worth protecting. I did not go inside. I stayed in the car and made a decision. The truth is that decision did not begin that night. It began 11 months earlier. By then, I already knew something was wrong. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough distance, enough coldness, enough moments where I felt like I was being managed instead of loved. So I started planning. At first, I told myself it was just caution, estate planning, asset protection, tax strategy, the kind of thing a careful attorney might do anyway. Over months, I had Nicole sign papers she barely read, deeds, trust documents, financial forms, business filings. She trusted me as her husband, and she trusted me as the lawyer handling the paperwork. Most of the time she signed with one eye on her phone and the other on the next thing she needed to do. That trust was about to become very expensive. That night, after I finally went inside, I locked myself in my office and reviewed everything. A quitclaim deed from last spring, pension forms from June, asset transfers, legal releases, corporate filings. Every move had been structured carefully. Every signature was hers. Every step was legal. At 2:47 in the morning, I opened the spreadsheet I had built and maintained in secret. Every account, Every property, every transfer. The house had been moved into a trust I controlled. The joint investments had been separated. Large portions of our shared money had been shifted slowly into places she did not know to check. It had taken time, patience, and precision. Was it cold? Yes, but cold is often what people call a boundary when it finally costs them something. At 1:15 a.m., I heard the garage door open. Then Nicole's heels on the tile. She called my name twice. I did not answer. I waited until she went to bed. At 6 in the morning, I showered, packed a duffel bag with 3 days of clothes, my laptop, and an external drive with encrypted copies of every document that mattered. I left the house keys on the counter. I left the spare car key. I left an envelope with proof of what I had done. No emotional note, no speech, just documents. Then I turned off my phone, removed the SIM card, and destroyed it. I had a burner phone ready. Backup email accounts, cloud storage she could not reach. A second car registered to an LLC. I had built the exit before I allowed myself to admit I might use it. The only part that hurt was Emma. Our daughter was 22 and living in Portland. The day before the ceremony, I had called her just to hear her voice. I told her I loved her. I asked about work. I said nothing about what was coming because I knew the moment I spoke, the story would no longer belong to me. At 6:33 a.m., I walked out. The sky was turning pink and orange. 3 blocks away, I got into the gray Toyota I had hidden for months and started driving north. I had no real destination. I just wanted distance. I had labeled a calendar reminder weeks earlier, day 1. 3 days later, I was sitting in a motel outside Portland, watching my old life come apart through a laptop screen. Because I had planned for this too. Months earlier, I had arranged access to the home security system, shared accounts, and other channels Nicole never thought to secure. Legally, I was on the accounts. Technically, I could see enough. Now I watched her panic in real time. She called my office. My parents, Emma, old friends. She reported me missing on day 2. The police told her exactly what I knew they would say. Adults are allowed to leave. Then my burner buzzed. Samuel Gaines, my attorney and an old friend from law school. "She's hiring Patricia Vance," he said. "Family law, aggressive." I smiled, which felt strange under the circumstances. Let her hire whoever she wanted. I had the paperwork. I also had something else. Screenshots. Account records. 8 months of late-night messages and private lunches between Nicole and Vincent. Nothing explicit enough to guarantee a courtroom victory, but enough to show a pattern. Enough to show intent. I had not gathered it to destroy her. I gathered it because people rewrite history when they get scared. And that is another red flag people ignore. The problem is rarely the first lie. The problem is the pattern that makes the lie believable. Then Emma sent me a message. "Dad, I know you can see this. Mom says you took everything. She says you abandoned us. I do not know what to believe. I need to know you are okay." That message hurt more than anything Nicole had done. I answered from a secure account. I told Emma I was safe. I told her I was sorry she had been dragged into this. I said her mother had made choices that broke our family, and when the time was right, I would explain. I told her I loved her. Portland still felt too close, so by sunset I crossed into Washington and headed for a small town I had researched months before. Population around 3,000. Quiet, cash-friendly, easy to disappear in if that was what you wanted. 2 weeks after I left, Nicole finally found the first document. She uploaded a mortgage statement to a shared drive and saw the quitclaim deed attached to the file history. Her own signature, dated 11 months earlier, transferred sole ownership of the house to me. I had told her it was part of an estate planning package. She had signed it with a wine glass in one hand and half her attention somewhere else. Now she looked. Now she understood. Samuel called again. Patricia was challenging the deed for fraud and duress. I asked him how that was going to work. The document had been signed before a notary. Nicole was sober enough to sign. The language was clear. There was no legal duress. There was only regret. She tried to access the investments and ran into the trust. Locked out. Patricia's advice, according to Samuel, was simple. Fight if you want, but it will cost more than you are likely to recover. Nicole was desperate. I rented a cabin in the mountains for 3 months and paid cash. The owner, a man named Dutch, did not ask questions. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. There was no pretending there, no careful conversation. No wondering whether I mattered to the person sitting across from me. Emma wrote again, this time angry. Dad, Mom says you tricked her. She says you stole everything. How could you do this? How could you just leave? I answered honestly, not everything, but enough. Then I told her about the awards dinner, about Vincent, about the invitation, about the way Nicole had smiled and said yes while I stood there. I told her I walked out because, in truth, Nicole had walked out of the marriage long before I ever left the building. Emma wanted proof. I told her to ask her mother about Vincent. That is the hard part about betrayal. The facts matter, but the timing matters too. By the time you can prove it, the damage has usually already been done. A week later, Dutch handed me an envelope. Nicole's handwriting was on the front. Inside was one line, "You win, I will sign whatever. Please let me keep something, the house for Emma." I read it twice, then burned it in the fireplace. Not because I was proud of that moment, not because it made me feel strong, but because she still did not understand. This was never about winning. It was about consequences. For years, she made me feel optional. For one moment in that ballroom, she made it public. 6 weeks after I left, Crawford Technologies collapsed. The company was hit with a major trade secrets judgment, around $60 million, and the stock crashed. Chapter 11 followed. I had been tracking the case long before that night because it sat near my field. I did not cause the collapse, but I understood exactly what it meant. Vincent's empire was cracking. Samuel called to tell me Nicole was suddenly in real trouble. No severance, bankruptcy at the company, no protection from the man she had chosen to impress. I felt hollow when I heard it. That surprised me. I thought I would feel satisfied. Instead, it just sounded like another ruin. Still, when I pictured that ballroom again, when I pictured Vincent staring me down and Nicole smiling back at him, the softness disappeared. That memory did not let me romanticize anything. Emma finally called. "Dad, what are you doing?" she asked. I told her the house was paid off now. I told her she would always have a roof over her head if she needed one. She said I sounded cold. I told her maybe I was, but I was done being invisible. Dutch poured me a whiskey that night and said, "Make sure you're running towards something, not just away." That stayed with me, because he was right. Leaving is only half a plan. If you do not build something after the leaving, then the pain still owns you. Months later, a podcast picked up the story. I do not know exactly how, but once it was out, strangers had opinions. Some people called me a legend. Others called me abusive. Some said I took control back. Others said I weaponized the law. I did not feel like a legend. I did not even feel like a victim anymore. I mostly felt tired. Then I got an email from Rebecca Stone, a literary agent in New York. She wrote, "There is a book here, not a revenge memoir, an honest story about what happens when someone stops being invisible." I called Samuel. Legally, he said, I could do it as long as I stayed truthful. Personally, it would mean stepping back into the light, no more disappearing, no more hiding behind the story other people told about me. Maybe that was the point. The deal came together quickly, 6 figures. The title was The Exit Strategy When Silence Becomes Power. Before I signed, I called Emma. I asked her to read everything before it was published. She agreed, but only on one condition. Once the book came out, I could not hide anymore. I said yes. The book sold. It sparked arguments. Some readers called it a serious look at emotional neglect. Others said it was a polished defense of abandonment. People debated the morality of what I had done like it was a law school case study. Maybe it was. Nicole read it too. Her email was only 3 lines. "You were right about more than I wanted to admit. I am sorry it took losing everything to see it." By then, she had moved to Portland, taken a job that paid far less, and started therapy. She told Emma she was trying to become a more present person. For the first time in a long time, I believed that she meant it. Then, 2 years and 3 months after I walked out of that ballroom, Nicole and I met on a bench along Portland's waterfront. The river moved slowly behind her. She looked older but calmer, less polished, more real. She told me about therapy, about how she had used work to avoid intimacy, about how success had become easier for her than closeness, about how she had spent years treating vulnerability like weakness. I listened. Then she asked, "What do you want from me?" I said, "Acknowledgement. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to matter." She nodded and said she was sorry. It was not healing. It was not reconciliation. It did not erase anything. But it was enough. She handed me the final divorce papers. No lawyers, no performance. We signed them there. She left first. I stayed on the bench with the papers in my lap and felt something I had not felt in years. Lightness, not forgiveness, not victory, just release. A week later, Emma called me and said she had changed her name. She had dropped Nicole's last name and gone by Branson only. She told me she wanted to honor the parent who had shown up when it mattered. That was as close to victory as I ever wanted. The book reached the bestseller list. I started speaking publicly about boundaries, self-respect, and the quiet ways people disappear inside relationships long before anyone calls it over. I began teaching business law to younger people, not just so they would understand contracts, but so they would understand protection. Legal, emotional, practical. I kept the cabin. It became a writing retreat. Dutch died 4 months ago. At his funeral, his daughter told me he respected that I had left before resentment turned into poison. I think about that a lot. Because the truth is, I did not leave to become a symbol. I did not leave to become the good guy. I did not even leave for revenge, not really. I left because one day I understood that my presence had become negotiable to the person who promised it never would be. And once you see that clearly, staying starts to cost more than leaving. 2 years ago, I walked out of a ballroom and drove into the unknown. I dismantled one life and built another, not because I was fearless, not because I was noble, because I finally believed that being seen starts with refusing to make yourself optional. If there is anything to take from this, it is simple. Lesson 1: when disrespect becomes public, the relationship is already in serious trouble. Lesson 2: if someone only values your presence after they lose access to it, that is not love. That is consequences. Lesson 3: planning your exit may look cold to outsiders, but many people only call it cruel when it works. Lesson 4: silence can protect your peace, but only if you use it to build a better life, not just to punish someone else. Lesson 5: being seen by others starts with seeing your own worth clearly. So now I want to ask you this. At what moment would you have walked away if you were in Cole's place? And do you think what he did was justice, or did he go too far?